Hello and welcome to my video all about how to sew a banana plushie. This is a fun sewing project to try, and in order to follow along you're going to need some yellow fabric, some paper and a pen or pencil, a disappearing or magic fabric pen, a ruler and a tape measure, a pair of scissors, some sewing pins and clips, a small piece of brown fabric, some toy stuffing, an iron and an ironing board, a sewing machine, a sewing needle and matching thread, some glue, a seam ripper, and if you have them, a rotary cutter and a cutting mat. For the yellow fabric I used fleece, and for the brown fabric I used distressed effect vinyl. Brown felt or even real leather would also be a good choice. Okay, so the first step is to cut out the paper templates. I drew mine freehand, but you'll need to print them out on separate sheets and tape them together. I had to tape a couple of A3 pieces of paper together to do this. Here you can see the shapes that you need, and you'll find a link to these templates in the description box below. If you want to make the banana the same size as mine, which is about 38 centimeters or 15 inches long, you'll need the largest template piece to be about 53 centimeters or 21 inches long. Throughout this video you might notice that I made the largest shape a bit too large for my project, but these templates are now the correct proportions. If, on the other hand, you want to change the shape and make your own templates, then you need to draw the curved banana shape first and then draw the two ovals. The sides of the small oval need to equal the length of the shortest curved side of the banana shape, and the sides of the large oval need to equal the length of the longest curved side of the banana shape. If you do make your own templates, make sure that when you're cutting the pieces out, you fold them in half to end up with symmetrical shapes. Then take the large oval shape, place it onto your yellow fabric, and draw around it using your disappearing fabric pen. Then cut along this line. Then cut this piece in half, straight down the middle. As you can see, I just folded it in half and then cut it. Don't worry if it's not perfectly in the centre. Next, you want to cut out two pieces of the curved banana shape. So fold the fabric over to give you a double layer, place the template on top, and then draw around the paper. Then use pins, like so, to hold the two layers together whilst you cut along this line. This will give you two banana shapes that are the mirror image of each other. Then lastly, draw around the smallest oval template and cut that out too. You should now have 5 separate pieces of fabric. You now need to take the two halves of the large oval, line up the straight edges, right sides together, and clip these pieces together like so. You can buy clips that are specifically for this purpose, but I just used what was lying around, so I'm using binder clips and paper clips. Note that the reason I use clips rather than sewing pins is that pins distort the fleece because of its thickness. You then need to sew all along this edge. Please note that I used roughly 1/4 inch seam allowance throughout this project. Don't worry too much about precision though, because fleece makes it a bit difficult to be accurate, and it's forgiving if you're a bit off. As always, make sure that you backstitch at the beginning and the end of the line to secure the thread. It's also best to use a longer than usual stitch length because the fleece is quite thick. I used either 3.5 or 4mm long stitches. Next, you need to sew the curved banana shapes to either side of the smallest oval. So first, clip one side of the oval to the shortest edge of one banana shape. Then sew along that edge. Next, do the same to the other side of the oval so that you'll end up with a symmetrical shape, very much like a rugby ball. With regards to the sewing thread, I used a polyester thread and I used a white colour. It's best if you use a matching yellow thread, but I wanted my lines to be seen a little bit since this is a demonstration. You should now have two sewn fabric pieces that look like this. Place both of these shapes right sides together, lining up the edges along one side only. Clip these two edges together and then sew along this edge. This will give you one large circular shape. Then clip together the remaining two raw edges of fabric and then sew along this edge. There are a couple of options for sewing this edge. You can either sew it with two separate lines of stitches, leaving a gap of a few inches in the centre, or you can do the same as me and sew along the entire edge before then unpicking a few inches of this line in the centre. It's also best to backstitch before and after where you're going to rip open this seam. I did it this way to ensure that the edges would definitely line up later when I sewed up the gap. Then you need to turn the shape right sides out, and then add toy stuffing to make it into a firm shape. Then use a sewing needle and matching thread to sew up the gap in the centre using the invisible stitch. I have a separate video on this if you need some help, but you basically just secure the thread at the beginning, then go into and out of the fabric parallel to the seam on one side and then the other. And you just repeat this all along the open edges. Every couple of inches you just need to pull on the thread parallel to the seam to make it close up, like so. And finally, it's time to add the brown fabric to the ends of the banana. To do this, you first need to cut out these paper shapes. The dimensions of the shapes are as follows. Then you just need to cut a segment out of the large circle that's about a third of the total size. I drew these freehand, so don't worry about being too accurate. I drew around a thread reel for the small circle and a glue bottle for the large circle. Just make sure that the strip is long enough to go around the outside of the small circle, plus a bit extra. Then draw around these shapes onto your brown fabric and cut them out. It's not necessary to do this, but I cut out the small circle and the strip as one piece. You then just sew the edge of the strip to the edge of the small circle, and then sew together the ends of the strip. You can then, like me, use a little bit of glue and some clips to try and get the exact shape that you want. The large circle shape simply needs to be glued into a cone. I just used UHU all-purpose adhesive. Trim the edge to neaten it up. You then just glue these ends onto the banana. And that's it, the banana plushie is complete. I really hope you enjoyed this project and thank you very much for watching.